Makes this nation great is our freedoms and the idea of equality.
We must demand full equality for all.
It's about time the Supreme Court weighed in on it, and hopefully they'll come down in favor of it.
Absolutely will be done this week. I just can't even imagine anything else. To me, it's an embarrassment that it hasn't already been done.
You know, the thing is the march towards history always leads, I'm quoting Martin Luther King here, it always leads towards equality. And I think I just terribly paraphrased that, but that's what we're hoping for here.
I think it's definitely going to be overturned, I hope.
No matter where you stand on same-sex marriage in that debate, one thing is clear. The country's opinion about it and who has the right to define it is changing. According to a new CNN ORC poll, 53% of Americans now think same-sex marriage should be legally recognized under the law. 44% say it shouldn't. Back in 2008, the country's support was the opposite. 53% were against it. Public opinion changing quickly on this issue. For the first time, next week, the Supreme Court will take on the issue and eventually decide whether it's the states or the federal government who have the right to define marriage in this country. Joining me now for more, Brian Moulton, the legal director for the Human Rights Campaign, and Ryan Anderson. He's a fellow at the Heritage Foundation and the co-author of What is Marriage? Man and Woman, a Defense. Ryan, let's start with you, with your latest op-ed for CNN.com, where you call this week's support of same-sex marriage by the American Academy of Pediatrics a, quote, PR stunt. And we should explain, the American Academy of Pediatrics is an organization of primary care pediatricians and specialists, and it came out this week and said that a two-parent household was good for children. Doesn't matter if it's a man and a woman and a woman, same-sex or a heterosexual relationship. You think that's a PR stunt?
Yeah, there's really no rigorous science that supports that conclusion. All of the science that we have shows that mothering and fathering are distinct phenomenons, and that children do best with a married biological mother and father. But the most important thing in the lead up to next week is that it's the American citizens and their elected representatives who should be voting on marriage policy, not 5 or 9 unelected judges.
Brian, for the first time in her long political career, Hillary Clinton came out in support of same-sex marriage. In a video that your organization released this week, the former Secretary of State, U.S. Senator, 2008 presidential candidate, had backed civil unions and partner benefits for same-sex couples, but she never made a full endorsement for marriage. She said it's about equality. Listen.
Gay rights are human rights, and human rights are gay rights, and that the United States would be a leader in defending those rights.
Brian, do you think this was a move to influence the Supreme Court, like the American Academy of Pediatrics and others who are trying to get their opinions out there now before the court decides?
Well, I think what you see from Hillary Clinton, from the American Academy of Pediatrics, from Rob Portman, from more and more figures, public and private, more and more organizations, is that this is the issue in front of the court, but in front of the American people in a way that it never has been before. And lots of folks want to make sure that their position on the issue is clear. You've seen more and more folks coming out for equality because really that's where our country is and where it's going.
You know, Ryan, I got to ask you, we showed those polls showing how quickly things have changed just over the past, 4 years. Do you see that sense that public opinion is changing, or you don't buy those polls?
Well, I think public opinion right now is changing, and that's why we shouldn't have the Supreme Court stop the conversation. What we don't need is for the Supreme Court to artificially stop the democratic process, which is what they did in Roe. So we've already seen this 40 years ago. They was having a conversation about abortion, and then the court shut it down, struck down laws in all 50 states, and it led to a 40-year culture war. We don't need the court creating another culture war on the question of marriage. Let the citizens discuss and vote.
Ryan, in your book, you say that the future of the country depends on the future of marriage, and the future of marriage depends on citizens understanding what it is and why it matters. So what is marriage to you, and what do you think would happen to the country if gays can marry?
Look, the state has an interest in marriage because it needs men and women to commit to each other as husband and wife, and then take responsibility for their children as mothers and fathers. And President Obama has spoken movingly about the importance of fathers, how he wished his father would have been involved in his life, and how that inspires him to be a good father to his own daughter.
So what's wrong with two fathers to a daughter?
How can the law teach that fathers are essential when it redefines marriage to make fathers optional? And it's not just two parents, it's a father and a mother. Mothering and fathering are distinct phenomenon, and children do best, and they have a right to a mother and a father, and that's what marriage does.
Brian, I'll let you react to that point.
Well, I mean, first of all, these talking points are always ignoring the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of children being raised by same-sex couples successfully in this country, which is why you have the American Academy of Pediatrics and lots of other child welfare organizations that have already come out in support of parenting by same-sex couples and marriage, because those kids deserve a stable, protected, respected home just as much as kids being raised by opposite-sex couples do. And I just completely disagree that somehow allowing those children to have a stable and legally recognized home is somehow a threat to marriage more broadly, or to the institution that gay and lesbian couples are simply trying to join.
Let me ask you, Brian, I guess also to react to Ryan's point that it would be the Supreme Court stopping the democratic process.
The Supreme Court's going to be doing its job, which is to make sure that the laws of the country are consistent with our Constitution and the guarantees for all people, minorities included, and that's what they're going to be doing next week. They're not breaking the rules of our democracy or stalling out the process. They're actually doing what they're there to do, which is to make sure that even if a law is passed by a state legislature or voted on by the people, it can't be inconsistent with our Constitution.
All right, Brian Moulton, Ryan Anderson, thanks both for spending a little bit of your time on a Saturday morning for an issue that is certainly something we'll be talking about in the weeks and months ahead. Thanks to both of you.
Thanks for having us.